Hi everyone, Wonia Tebow here with Buckskin Revolution, and I hope you can hear me over the spring birds. We've got some Bullock's Orioles building nests in the treetops above here. I've been focusing a lot lately about building resiliency within ourselves for the coronavirus times, but it's also important to be thinking broader picture and what can we do to help the land that we live on and near be more resilient in the face of things like climate change and droughts and increasing wildfires, which we've been seeing more and more all around the country and all around the world in recent years. So it is spring, and as of the 1st of May, we're going to have a countywide bird ban, or a lot less burn ability. And so we're taking the time here to do some preparation now to have the land be as resilient against the potential of wildfires as possible. And that looks like projects like fuels reduction and fire breaks, and a technique we're doing today called broadcast burning. So the backstory is that once upon a time, wildfires were fairly common, and they would come through regularly and they would burn out the underbrush. But of course, with people, expanding and living in a lot more places on the land, we've had more fire suppression so that people's homes don't burn up. But what that means is that in a lot of these areas, we have tons of buildup of fuels because we're not having regular small fires come through, which means that when big fires come through, they are catastrophic and they get so hot that they just burn up everything in their path, including, tall old trees that would have survived smaller ground fires. So one of the things that we can do if we're trying to, return the land to more natural cycles and tend it well, is to reproduce those smaller fires through doing our own broadcast burn. The idea of this isn't to be an instructional video talking you through this, but rather a demonstration of some technique. I certainly would recommend doing more research and making sure that you really know what you're doing before doing something like starting fires in your property. But let's take a look at broadcast burning as a fire management, fuels reduction, and land tending technique. So today is a great day for it because we had a little bit of moisture yesterday and we don't have a lot of breeze that's going to whip the fire up. So we're doing small sections of controlled broadcast burning that are just going to come through and burn up your fallen branches and duff and that kind of thing. We've prepared for it by doing a lot of fuels reduction, cleaning out some of the smaller saplings and a lot of the brush. And if there were any branches, dead branches lower on the trees, which there actually weren't in here because it was so thick, but those are called fire ladders. They're a way that the fire can creep up into the canopies of trees. So you want to make sure that you have all of those down before doing that. This tool here is called a drip torch, and it is a way to seed fire onto the land. So it's full of diesel and it drips slowly. So we just get the wick wet and light it up, open up the bleeder valve here, and now I can apply fire to the landscape. So you want to think about how you start your fire, and you're going to be doing a small burn first on the downwind side of your fire to do a fire break, and then you're going to go to the opposite side and start a line of fire on your upwind side and let it slowly creep up to that fire break you've created. Of course, you're going to want to have running water on hand, so hose running as you do this for safety precautions, and you're always going to want to be in attendance. You're not going to leave your fire unattended. And if it starts to creep up some of the trees, you're going to want to watch that. On some of these, we let it burn up the moss a little bit because these are oaks that aren't going to be really volatile and burny, but if it was firs with a lot of little branches, then you'd want to be really conscientious about not letting it do that. So, of course, you are going to want to be sure that you have this planned for early in the day before it gets hotter and drier and before potential of wind picks up. fall is a more ideal time to do a broadcast burn, but around here usually we don't get burn permits open until it's too wet in the fall to really get a good burn. So spring, not ideal, but it's when it's legal to do it. And most of the undergrowth is going to come back from this pretty well. So a lot of these areas are super fire adapted, and the roots are going to be deeper. Bulbs and things like that usually can go through some amount of burn without being damaged. So we will still have our spring wildflowers. So broadcast burning, a great way that you can make your land more fire safe, that you can mimic natural cycles and keep wildfires from potentially being catastrophic should they come your way. Thanks so much for joining me. Please check out my website, buckskinrevolution.com, for more resources, tools, etc., for learning how to build resiliency within your own body, within the landscape, within your skill set, so that you are better prepared for whatever interesting times may befall you. Also, please consider supporting me on Patreon. That's where a lot of my funding to do all of this comes from and really makes a huge difference for me.